Okay, so we will start our session. In our last class, we had completed JDBC in JSP. Today, we will go to one of the important point, important terminology, MVC in JSP. So, what do you mean by MVC? Model View Controller. So, we will see. So, what is MVC? MVC without a database, MVC with a database that we will discuss. So very important terminology. So in web application development. So first of all, what is MVC? So I can write one statement. It is one or it is an architectural design pattern. It is an architectural design pattern. So which is specifically used to develop dynamic web application. So it is a design pattern. Without MVC, we can develop a web application. There is no problem. Maybe question may arise. So why MVC? Without MVC, if we can develop a web application, then why we will use MVC for web application development? Very simple. Suppose I will make a building. So why nowadays what is happening? So every people we are bringing an architectural plan. So through architectural plan nowadays people making building. What is the advantage? Definitely advantage is first in general look and feel will be good. Suppose you without an architecture, if we will make a building and with architecture, if we will make a building, so definitely look and feel will be good. Within a less space, more room can generate, and every room communication will be good. So like lots of advantages that we will get. So here also same type of things, presentation logic and business logic will be different. So we will discuss what is MVC, and MVC has an architecture and there is a mechanism of MVC. Then practically we will discuss without database and with the database. So in MVC architecture, there is a client side and there is a server side and there is a database. So this is client side, and this is server side. So this part is server side. So in server side, model is a component and view is a component, controller is a component. This is database side. So basically, we use MySQL or Oracle as our database environment. So basically, we use MySQL. So in server side, model is a component, view is a component, and controller is a component. First of all, so I will represent controller. Controller is a component. Let view is a component, and model is a component. Model is a component. So this is controller component. Then question is which technology we will consider as controller component. So you remember particularly in this context servlet. Servlet must be controller component. We will consider. So this is protocol. This is rule and regulation. Similarly, view component. So a JSP page or a set of JSP page can consider as view component. So what I told, one JSP file or more than one JSP file we will consider as view component. Then which technology we will consider as model component. There are many technologies we can consider as model component, but we will choose which is suitable for model component. For model component, so we can choose JDBC, we can choose EJB, Enterprise Java Bin, we can choose Java Bin. Okay, so many technologies we can consider as a model component. We can choose Hibernate. So these are the model components. But thing is, JDBC not suitable because we have seen in JDBC context for executing one SQL statement in Java environment, we are following five number of steps to load and register the driver, establishment of connection, create the statement object, execute the SQL query or SQL statement, or close the connection. So if we have multiple SQL statements that we will execute, then for one SQL statement or one which is representing one task, we are following five steps. And you think and imagine in a project one SQL statement is not requiring, so definitely more than one SQL statement we require. So code complexity will arise, code complexity will increase. Another major drawback is JDBC code what checking, throwing checked exception. So anytime we have to write JDBC code within try block and catch block, otherwise throws keyword we will use. So it is complex. It is tedious. EJB till now we have no idea enterprise Java been, but EJB is a technology to develop web and enterprise application. But EJB now it is not demanding because whatever the disadvantages of EJB, so Spring framework when came to the market, so Spring framework eliminating the disadvantages of EJB. So EJB is not suitable. Hibernate till now we have no idea. So Hibernate is not a suitable component as model component. So the very lightweight component, Java bin. So Java bin is a simply class containing private data members and containing getter and setter method. So Java bin, so the term, so widely we will use in Spring framework. So after JSP, we will go to Spring. So in Spring context, Java bin we will use. So we will discuss what is Java bin. So you remember in MVC context, which terminology we will consider as model component. You remember that is Java bin. So what is Java bin? So Java bin is a lightweight component. Simply, it is a class containing private data members and containing getter and setter method. Okay. So in this way, we got clarity. So in server side, model is a component, view is a component, controller is a component. Java bin we consider as model component, servlet we consider as controller component, a JSP page or a set of JSP pages, or we can say a JSP file or more than one JSP file we can consider as view component. Then database is MySQL. Then what is the mechanism? So first the request. The request will go from client to server side, especially to the controller component. First, whatever the request will go, basically that is called as what? HTTP request. So whatever the request, always we know that request always going from client to server side. So when the request will go from client to server side, the request must reach at controller components. Then what the controller component do? What is the purpose? What is the responsibility of a controller component? Then controller component check, okay, Java bin as a model component. So controller component responsibility is first the controller creating the instance of model component. Okay, so controller responsibility word controller creating or creates an instance of model components. Instance of model components. So model is a Java bin. Java bin is a class simply containing private data members. Practically we will see also, and containing getter and setter method. So whatever the model component we have, so model is nothing but a class. So that class object we will create inside the servlet. Servlet, whatever we will develop in this context, that servlet we will consider as a controller component. So first controller component creating the instance of model component. Then you will remember model Java bin. So whatever the model component we have, model component containing business logic. Whatever we have the problem statement, whatever we have the task. So for that, we will write a business logic. So where I will write the business logic, always we write in a model component. So controller component execute, controller component execute a business logic. Whatever the business logic we write in model components. That means in servlet we will execute. We will see practically. So after that, then controller choose a particular JSP page or a JSP file as view component. Through that view component, so response will come to the client. So controller component choose a particular JSP file as view component. And through this view component, so a response will come to the client. Over the web, whatever the response will come, basically that is called as HTTP response. Then model component only interact with the database. Model component only interact with the database. The controller component and view component cannot communicate with the database directly. If the controller and view component want to communicate with the database, they can communicate via model component. But you remember, always in MVC context, model component interact with the database, communicate with the database. Practically, we will see. And sometimes JSP also a view component can also communicate with the model components. So this is MVC architecture rules and regulation. So again, I'm repeating client, whatever the request is going from client to server side, the request will reach at controller component. Then controller check it who Java bin as model component. So what is Java bin? Java bin is a class containing private data member. I will write Java bin. Simply a class containing private data members and containing getter and setter methods. Containing getter, get triple x, getter method and setter method. We know that getter and setter method, get return type, set return type. Okay, so basically in this context,
Sir, what is private data member?
private int x, private int x, that is private data member. Practically, we will see whatever suppose string name, I will write private string name. This is very fundamental. You are asking here private, the keyword private like public, private is another keyword in Java programming, that term considering as modifier. Okay, suppose we have a login form, two attribute username and password. So for login form, I will create a class. So to data member, I will write private string username, private string password. I can show you also. We will see practically. So, but in MVC context, Java been containing business logic. So, what is the responsibility? What are the responsibilities of controller component? First, controller component creating the instance of model component. That means model component object we will create inside the controller component. So after creating the instance of model component, the controller component executing business logic, whatever the business logic we will write inside the model component. After executing business logic, the controller component will choose a particular JSP page as view component. And through that view component, the response will go to the client side. So whatever the request is going, whatever the response is coming to the client over the web, basically that request is called as HTTP request and HTTP response. Model component only interact with the database. That means model component can communicate with the database component. If the controller component and view component want to communicate, so directly they cannot communicate. If they will communicate, so controller and view, they will communicate via model component. So this is MVC rules and regulation, and this is MVC architecture. MVC architecture, MVC architecture, rules and regulations. Yes, this is the rules and regulations. Servlet must be controller component. This is protocol. JSP must be view component. This is a protocol. So when we will go to Spring framework, again we will cover. There is a term Spring MVC. Okay, so this is all about MVC architecture, rules and regulations in JSP.